Today, I'm very excited. We have Torrance York here. And before I introduce her professionally, because I will introduce her professionally, um, she was actually the subject of a book. It was written a long time ago, Hi, Jamestown, New York, that my grandmother had given me called A Very Young Gymnast. And I loved this book. I love a lot of books, but I definitely love this book. And I read it a lot. And in another NeuroLife online program, Your Brain on Art, I saw her name and I was like, oh, is that Torrance York? Oh my God, is that from the subject of this book? And so I kind of sent her a little private message and I asked her, and I think she kind of laughed and she was like, yes. And then we started talking. And she told me about what she's doing now and the artistic side of her that obviously I had not read about. And I was just so excited that she wanted to come and talk with us. So, without further ado, I want to introduce her properly. Torrance York earned a BA from Yale and an MFA in photography from RISD. In 2020, she published her monograph, Semaphore, about the shift in her perspective after being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2015. Featured in various publications and podcasts, Semaphore has been awarded in LensCraft's 2021 Art and Science Awards and as a favorite book of 2022 by online photography magazine, What Will You Remember? Torrance presented Semaphore at the World Parkinson's Congress and recently exhibited the series in a solo show at the Danforth Art Museum in Framingham State University in Massachusetts. She was a resident artist at the Anderson Ranch Art Center and received a CT Artist Fellowship grant. Her work is represented by Rick Wester Fine Arts Gallery in New York City. Thank you so much for being here today, Torrance. You know I'm so ecstatic about this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the Jamestown folks, I haven't seen you all since, what's that, like 1997 or something? So it's wonderful that you're in this audience. I'm excited to share my project with everyone. And thank you so much for having me, Eden and Kelly. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Does everybody see that? All right, terrific. Okay. So my plan is to talk about the development of this project and how I created it into a book, and then to talk about how this project and book has been an example of art impacting my life, as well as my life impacting my art, which is a more common experience for me. And a question that I've been seeking an answer for is why this has been such a powerful experience. So as I get to the end of the talk, we'll be sharing more about that. So looking at art offers me an opportunity to reflect and connect and be present. So I am sharing here just some images that have been meaningful to me over the years. On the left, a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, Evening Star #4. And then this picture by W. Eugene Smith, The Walk to Paradise Garden, is an image that I saw as a teenager, and I feel like I keep recreating it. So as I share the work, I think you'll see why or how that's reflected in there. So I invite you now here to connect with me and be present, looking at this work and connecting to each other. This is a picture from the book of me and my now 18-year-old holding hands. So I'm going to go back there. Through making this work and ultimately the book, I spent a lot of time thinking about why I'm doing it and what I have found valuable. So previously, the reward of connecting with whatever I'm photographing has looked different depending on the subject. So one thing I'm very interested in is the connection between photography and memory. And this is a picture of my father. I ended up making a video about him and about how I learned so much about him from photographs because he died when I was 6. So when I saw this picture when I was younger, I thought, of course, my father must be this important guy. He was a doctor and he's giving a speech here. You see the microphone in the bottom right of the screen. But then I found this picture, which was my brother playing with the same horn that my father had just put down. So it turns out it was just goofing with an instrument, not him giving a speech. Then I love to take portraits of children mostly, and this is my now 21-year-old. And then connecting with nature has always felt important. This black and white work I applied to graduate school with, and I called the series Refuge and Questioning. So I found already then a emotional space in nature. Then I got into color. And here I started naming the work, the landscape work, with the GPS coordinates of where I am when I take the picture. So that's a slight shift to not just enjoying nature, but considering what it means to be in a certain place and to have your own experience in that place. And then I got into a series called Roadworks, looking at marks on the road. And here is I think this is like a 2019 picture taken in a local park. So I was photographing the public parks in my neighborhood. And this image to me harkens back to the W. Eugene Smith picture. And this is also a night picture in that public park. So now I feel like while I'm connecting with people who may or may not have been on that precise GPS coordinates, it's also a connection through the public spaces in my community. Okay, but connecting with the subject of Semaphore is different. So in Semaphore, I'm examining the shift in my perspective, having been diagnosed with Parkinson's, as Eden said. But with this work, kind of like meditating on a mantra, the images ended up being a place to put these questions, concerns, and observations that I was picturing. And so I found that I would photograph along certain themes, one being the body, nature, everyday items, toys that I set up in certain ways. And I combine these images with images of light, medical images that are mine, MRIs, etc. And a few text phrases. There's 6 in the book. These are 3 here. Is it my DNA? Balance itself is a goal. And I turn towards the sun. Okay. So as many of you know firsthand, Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative movement disorder for which there is no cure, but there is the option of medication to help address certain symptoms. And we do know that exercise can help slow the progression. So at least we've been given that hope. So 10 million people in the world currently are living with Parkinson's, and it's the fastest growing brain disorder. I was diagnosed in 2015, and it wasn't until 2019 that I started to use my art to help me work through the diagnosis and what it means for me to live with PD. So I asked myself, what does acceptance look like? I thought if I could picture it, maybe I could realize it. When I was a gymnast, I always used to positively visualize my routine before I'd go up. And the night before, I had to positively visualize all 4 routines without a mistake. And if I fell off the beam in my mind, I had to do it again. So I had some experience where positively visualizing something could lead me to greater success. So I was looking back towards that. So project started, I was taking a workshop and I had told the teacher, it was a sort of an academic year schedule. So this was now, I think, the 3rd year that I was in the workshop. And the year before, I told the teacher, I just want you to know that I have Parkinson's. It's a bummer that I can't always, get everything done. And I just want you to know that that's one of the reasons why. I said, but my artwork isn't about it or anything. I just need you to know this. So at the time, I didn't think my artwork was about it. Although in retrospect, I realized that that very colorful landscape and that work in the local parks was really my effort to make more joyful imagery where I was focusing on bright colors. When I got diagnosed, that was, I thought, a great piece of advice that a PD coach gave me, that find things that bring you joy and do more of them. So in this workshop, the assignment was each of us, there were only 8 of us, you had to contribute 2 adjectives to describe yourself. So I was given someone else's, the teacher swapped them around, and I was given optimistic and nurturing. And I knew exactly who that was, a person I really enjoyed in the class. So I was channeling my friend Anne as I was thinking, how do I picture this? And I had this tube of paper that, like a week before, I'd taken a picture with my iPhone on the tube just to see how many circles of paper I had and to use the formula of the circumference to find out how many inches I had of paper to print on. But it was kind of a cool picture. And so then I ended up playing with that and this idea of light at the end of the tunnel. And I came up with this as an alternative after I took the optimistic picture with the light at the end of the tunnel. I was playing with the black and white. And at this point, this picture means to me a phrase that a NPR personality used to say. I remember when I lived in DC, he would say, make it a great day. So to me, this is about the choice. You can see it, half full or half empty. But the reason it resonated so much with me, I think, to have the opportunity to photograph metaphors was that these particular ones, optimism and nurturing, were already goals of mine. When I got diagnosed, I was aware, particularly this wonderful support group we have near us called Shakers Anonymous, that being positive is half the game, that it's easier to care for yourself if you're in a positive mindset. So already I was trying to keep myself positive and I was trying to nurture myself more, because as a parent, it's much easier to do things for other people, like your children and your family overall and your husband, than to necessarily take care of yourself. So at the different stages of the process of doing this work, different images would become important to me, and different things that I'd see in my world would have new meaning. For example, in the anxious period of recently being diagnosed, something as simple as a cherry blossom branch could end up meaning to me, it looked like a neuron and its dendrites. Obviously, this is not a spread in the book. This is just a diagram to show you the connection that I was seeing. And fear. I took this picture. At first, I just noticed this beautiful nest. And I thought, oh my God, these wasps are so amazing and accomplished that they could build a house like this. And then I got my long lens out and I saw that it looked like this mouth was this sort of gaping mouth and then this eye up here. And I started to cry because I felt like it was so scary and life was so uncertain. And that's what I was connecting with. My husband was working just to clear some stuff by the fence. And he found this branch growing through the fence. And I said, wait, 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 don't cut it down yet. I have to photograph this. This is an example of adaptation. And this is what I need to learn. So I felt like I was seeing things all around me that had new meaning. And of course, fearing my own demise, even though we often mostly don't die from Parkinson's, this bunch of coyotes, I guess, got this opossum and left him in our yard. So again, I said, don't move it. I got to photograph it. One of the first things that was difficult for me to use, I mean, there's so many different ways that you get clues that you have a problem. One of them for me was trying to mix the pancake batter. Any like regular movement like that, I just felt so spastic doing it. I knew I had to keep doing it because, it's not good to just stop moving. But I was tempted always to ask someone else in the kitchen to help me, like a teenager. So this picture, it has special meaning to me. When I was walking to the doctor, which you get to see your movement disorder specialist infrequently, right? Like twice a year, maybe 3 or 4 times. And so I was going through the list of what exactly do I want to communicate? What are my questions? And I realized as I was walking there that I really feel asymmetrical when I walk. I have a bit of a drop foot on my left side. My left side is generally more affected by Parkinson's. And I feel asymmetrical when I walk. And that just like identifying that felt powerful. And then it was something I could communicate to the doctor. And then when I came home and I made this picture to show asymmetry, I sort of felt like I'd scored a goal or something. It was this very rewarding accomplishment to picture this. But the really interesting thing to me now about it is that I think I took this in 2020 maybe. And I bought the tangrams off of Amazon, ones that looked like bones. That much I was aware of. But when I showed this in a slideshow to my Parkinson support group, someone said to me, well, that's an angel, don't you? And I really hadn't thought of it as a human form like that. I just was thinking about asymmetry. So this project has really, again, like impacted my life. It keeps going back and forth. I see things, I make things, those things teach me new things. So in case everybody on this call, on this Zoom doesn't know what I know personally about Parkinson's, some of the common symptoms are tremor, rigidity and stiffness, slowness of movement, difficulty with fine motor dexterity, difficulty with balance and walking, loss of postural reflexes, and non-motor symptoms such as anxiety or depression. And another basic rule about Parkinson's is that everybody manifests the symptoms differently. So any one person may have a different kind of tremor than another person or no tremor at all. So as I was learning more about brain health through my group and through my research and through my doctor's appointments, I became aware of behaviors that I wanted to have, aspirations for my own self-care. So one of those things, let's see, I'm way off script. Hold on one second. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't want to just picture my fears and challenges, but also my goals and aspirations. So in this picture, I knew that it was important to reduce stress and to relax. So what's better for that than a bubble bath? I learned to meditate to calm my mind and again to reduce the impact of stress on my body and brain. This is my singing bowl. The nest, it has the shape of a heart, but to me, it was just about, it's an empty nest, but to me, it was about a nurturing space. And this is one of the pictures about light, and it's the steam off of my tea kettle, which is one of my favorite times of day. And here is the lima bean that I sprouted and put in the singing bowl. My goal with that was to grow something new to point to neuroplasticity. So here, when I put the lima bean in the bowl, it took this form, and to me, it looked like a person in a lunge holding a rock. So I call it my Sisyphus picture. So the title of the book, Semaphore. Semaphore is not a term I knew until I was listening to A Handmaid's Tale while one of my kids was reading it in school. So that was pretty recent. That was about 2019. And so semaphore means it's like a visual language using flags or light that ships used to use to communicate in the 1900s, or ship to shore. So it is a form of communication, a visual form of communication. So that was my first connection to it. In A Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood said the bodies were hanging from the wall like a semaphore. So these are people who had tried to escape the community, who had been killed. So it was an ominous signal. So that also I connected with, given my ominous situation of my uncertainty about life with a new diagnosis. But then, as I mentioned, I feel like I'm expressing my signals by making this artwork, but that I also am receiving signals by the world around me, largely fueled by my new sort of awakened awareness to my concerns, like a heightened sense of sensitivity. And then the other reason to name it this is that if Parkinson's is about losing or damage to your dopamine making cells, therefore having not enough dopamine, dopamine is a neurotransmitter and a communicator within the nervous system. So that's the third reason that I picked this title that nobody really knows what it means. And as an epigraph, when I was looking for someone to write for me for this book, a curator told me about David Bales, who is a photographer. He and Ted Orland wrote books together, or still write books together. And David Bales turns out has Parkinson's. So she introduced me to him, but I said, well, before you do that by email, let me reread the book. And that's where I found this wonderful phrase. Notice the objects you notice, or put another way, make objects that talk and then listen to them. So that very much pictured to me, demonstrated to me the idea of it's a two-way street being creative. So now, if what I have created is somewhat of a visual language expressing my experience, I would like to know from you all what these next couple images mean. So it is my hope that you might speak or chat some feedback. Is anyone willing to share with me what I might be communicating, or what you as a viewer are learning or perceiving or thinking or feeling from looking at this image?
Roger wrote a totem pole, but I
Mhm.
see precariousness. Like, part of me, I'm very attracted to the light that I see, the sun behind it, but I see it as precarious. And Marcia said, I see myself as unbalanced
Mhm.
or
Well,
staying in balance, a delicate balance. Got a lot of balancing going on.
yeah. Well, life is a balancing act. But again, there's no right answer. And it's my specific springboard idea for taking this was the challenges of staying upright and, strongly upright. Like the wedges are about correcting the posture, like turning your belt buckle up and putting your shoulders back and, tilting your head uh, not up, but straight. So that was part of the inspiration. And I love playing with these blocks because I loved blocks as a kid and I wanted to go back to things that brought me joy. Okay, how about this one? Are you turning your volume up, Ed, so that I can hear you?
Ed said impossible to do. Lauren said it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Donna said it's humbling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nancy said
I like that.
independence. Marcia said it's a dexterity challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I
like
think,
that.
mhm,
Someone said independence.
yeah.
So I like that's like such a positive perspective. I love that. Thank you.
Once again, I love the light in this. Like, that's what's kind of captivating me.
Well, I have a story about this one.
Someone says inner thoughts,
Inner thoughts.
and or Roger says sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else just says, "Wow, that's gorgeous," and then peace.
Mm. Okay. Well, and this is illuminating. So for me, it started with that silver ball is one of the two balls. I think you call them, is it bokeh balls or I can't actually, I'm sorry, I don't know the name, but you you put two in your hand and you rotate them around each other to build hand dexterity. So that's what that's what the silver ball is. When I put it on the block, I was thrilled that it would stay. And I was thinking about being a spectacle. The idea that because I moved differently, one day I had lunch in the cafeteria at the kids' school because I was making a video for them. And I thought, why did I put so much like water in my glass? Now I'm gonna like spill it. And it just I felt not that anyone was looking at me, but I felt um, conspicuous because I felt like I was obviously moving differently. Um, so then another time that I was showing this work, someone said, well, I see this taunting face. And I thought, what are you talking about? But of course, it's this mouth and this nose and these eyes, um, with a sort of crinkled look on the mouth. Certainly not a smile, but anyway, so that was kind of a fun journey to see that again, something was like in there that I hadn't noticed yet. I had created this picture and edited it into the book and printed the book and shown the book. Okay. If connection is good for us, what does this picture mean?
I love the soulful eyes. Kelly said the same. Soulful devotion.
Yes, like unconditional love, right? And this beautiful dog, he passed away in December, but he was such a trooper and he was always there for me whenever I wanted to like nap or snuggle or walk. It's one of my favorite pictures in the book. What does this one bring to mind?
I have to ask what you're holding because I'm kind of captivated by it.
It is confusing. So,
Lauren says anonymity, and Nancy says behind the fear.
hmm, okay, well, the ice disc is made from the dog's water bowl that froze outside. And then I put that on a small glass mirror, a small mirror, like a 12 by 12-inch mirror panel that I had. And my initial thought was, I'll get this ice disc and the trees, and it'll be this cool shot. But then, because in Parkinson's, people talk about freezing when their movement is frozen and their medications may be off at the time. Um, I only took about 3 pictures where I was like looking into the disc like this. And that's ended up being the picture, where it ended up feeling like I had obscured my head or that my thoughts were frozen or um, that ended up being more interesting than just this circular disc of ice reflecting around the trees. And this here is my dog's paw. He scraped, the condensation from his paw as he was walking around helping me on my shoot. Okay, let's see here. There's only a few more pictures to show you of where I want to know what you think.
As a woman, I don't like it because I see it's like this is how we get measured. Nancy said the measure of our health, but I always think about women like the measure of our waist, for example.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Roger says I'm wound too tight, and DF says like a rose, which actually I'm like, oh, I can see that.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Well, for me, it was about one of my first realizations that I needed to take care of myself was I looked at my two arms and the circumference of one was actually a centimeter and a half smaller than the other. And this was following a frozen shoulder that I had acquired. So actually, it was before the diagnosis that I noticed before the diagnosis of the frozen shoulder, which was 2 years before my Parkinson's diagnosis. But anyway, it got me thinking about the tape measure as a symbol for taking stock each day, like how you're feeling, how you're doing, what symptoms are you dealing with today is one way I think of it now. But when I put the tape measure down like this, I was 54 at the time when I took the picture. And it just so happens that's like the number that is in focus. So I thought that was kind of fun. This might be hard to see since it's on a white background, but it's just a foggy horizon line in the Long Island Sound. So a lot of people that I know that have Parkinson's end up responding to this picture. So I'm curious if people feel that way today.
We have a foggy brain. We have unknown future. We have Nancy's big on the making it positive. The warmth of winter.
Hmm.
But it's unknown future.
Yeah, yeah. This picture ended up being the end pages to the book. And this again is about the connection. Okay, so um, one of the really fun parts about making a book is taking these different single images and pairing them up. So I'm going to show you a few of those, some of my favorite ones. So I would get interested in something and then I would play around with it. So this is, well, I'm going to show you a blow up of that. This is an ice bead on top of one of those markers for the snowplow. And this is the neighbor's light on their fence across the street. And this is unfortunately my broken heel where the bruise just kept moving around my foot for about 2 weeks before I had to stay off it for 3 months. Okay, so this ends up bringing new meaning to an image you've already seen. I actually took the picture of the falling before I made the picture of the standing. Where's my water? Hold on. So I don't know if anybody here ever played with Cuisenaire rods when they were younger, but it's a tool that mostly in kindergarten and stuff, they teach you about math with these different colored rods that are different units. And this is the 1 and 2 units. I was just trying to show like the dissolving of concentration, thinking about the loss of dopamine. So it's fun to play with the shapes, comparing this. This was a sundial at my great aunt and uncle's house, and it says, "I count none but sunny hours." And here I really like to see the pattern of the skin and the pattern of the bed canopy. But also when I look at this, I think about how the experience inside and the experience outside there's such a fine line. And for example, if you had a dream, is that memory from a dream, or was it a reality? That confusion. Is it Parkinson's or is it aging? Another question I ask myself a lot. Um, and thinking about these beautiful shapes we have in our bodies and how that is, reinforced or reiterated in the wasp's nest. I don't know how many people with Parkinson's in this audience have experienced different challenges with typing and pressure sensitivity. So I was trying to type, and I would just always continue to like capitalize the second letter or repeat letters. And my son wanted me to help him type something. And I said, well, I'm the one with Parkinson's, you type it. He said, no, Mom, I'll get you this other keyboard. It's a mechanical keyboard. And that way you won't have any trouble knowing whether you pressed it once or not. So he did give me that keyboard, and I do use that when I'm not using my laptop. I use that. And this picture here, this is a little gem, just a plastic gem-like thing that we got at a arcade. And when I put it on the I key, it reminds me of the solipsism and the self, sort of stuck in yourself when you have a condition like this that you can't forget because you move all the time and you move differently than you used to. So here's the whisk with the bath. And this knife, I felt that, using tools is now a different challenge. And cutting Brussels sprouts they're harder to cut, so it's a bit threatening. And I thought that the best way to show that trepidation was before I undertook the task. So I like seeing these together. This is a sun salutation, just reaching up. With this spread, it says, can I be this adaptive? And I like to see these together. Here's another picture of light. It's just the raindrops outside my window, but it's a casement window, so the cross-hatching of the screen is being backlit. Is there text here? I can't see it. Yes. What does it say? Let me change this.
It says, is it my DNA?
Yes, exactly. My mother and I have the same toe structure, so that's what made me think about DNA when looking at this picture. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. There we go. This was my grandmother's lace on the right, something that it was sort of like a little jacket that she had sewn. And she always wanted me to sit upright and pronounce the H in the word and the T in the word white, for example, or yeah, other directions that she had. But I really cherished her, and she taught me to crochet. So when I pulled this out of the closet for whatever reason, suddenly it had new meaning to me. This is a storm, and it's hard to see how, yeah, doesn't zoom in. But anyway, the shutter speed is slow, so some of the leaves are turning over. And I really like how these two pictures come together. This is just light reflecting off of the faucet in the kitchen from the sun outside. So here's the cotton ball and the moving clouds. And the last picture in the book is here on the right is Orion. So this is the belt and the sword, and I guess those are the arms or the shoulders and the head there. But this star right here is called Bellatrix. So I think of Orion as a hunter. So that's like fighting for sustenance. But then when you think of Bellatrix, who's a female warrior, which is the name of this star, it feels also like fighting for sustenance and survival. And here are some images from the exhibits that I've had of the work. First at Rick Wester, and then at the Danforth Museum, which just came down recently. And my next show is going to be in April at the New Canaan Library, which is been newly renovated. So what's been interesting to me is that I've had this artistic journey. Obviously, my art changed in that this recent project is now got a new subject, which I wasn't photographing before. But there's lots of research around creativity and Parkinson's. And my friend Marcia, who's here, for example, doesn't take medication, levodopa carbidopa, but does paint much more than she ever painted before. So it's, and for me, I now do take levodopa carbidopa, which gave me a lot of my capabilities back. But it, I don't think it changed whether or not I'm doing my art, because that's been consistent. There's some research that shows that artistic occupations in your later years reduce the risk of Parkinson's, and that many people have found silver linings. 82% of the people that they surveyed had found silver linings having gotten Parkinson's. And these are 3 books that have influenced my thinking. Your Brain on Art is like the huge one, how, you know, it isn't only my imagination, that it is uplifting for me to do this work. Dacher Keltner's book about awe also talks about the physical changes we experience when we experience moments of awe. And Lisa Miller's book, The Awakened Brain, I feel like this awakened awareness that I've had is an example of that. What is life showing you is one of the questions she likes to ask. And in Your Brain on Art, How Art Transforms Us, that is the subtitle of the book. They define the neuro arts as the transdisciplinary study of how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change the body, brain, and behavior, and how this knowledge is translated into specific practices that advance health and well-being. So it is just incredibly exciting that they talk about not only making art, but beholding art is positively impacts you by doing things like lowering your cortisol or producing oxytocin or dopamine spikes. And they say you don't have to be good at art. It doesn't have to be good art. It just has to be being creative. This picture is one that I found this egg last April, and it is my picture that exemplifies awe, because the fluids in the eggshell to me look like the profile of a bird. So that's the show. For me, I feel like you think that making a project like this could be disarming because it's so vulnerable, but it's actually been the opposite. It's been a really positive experience. And when I think back to my initial question of how is it that it's been such a strong experience and strengthening experience to make this book, I look towards those authors as examples of saying, yes, it's not my imagination, but it's actually been my reality. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, one of my questions is because you obviously talked about the fact that you had there was a period of time where you between you were diagnosed and you did this, and you kind of talked about like what does acceptance look like. So I guess my question is like what were you doing before? How were you coping? How were you accepting? What were you doing before you kind of tapped into this?
Well, I was trying to make those joyful landscape images. That was one thing. Um, I think, yeah, I think that I was trying to, I was reading books. I was reading like the Gratitude Diaries, for example. I was going to my support group. I was going to physical therapy, trying to exercise. I was crying a lot at first. But also there was COVID, so during COVID, I feel like everybody got the experience, particularly initially before we knew what we were dealing with, of like, am I going to die from this? Or like, what does this really mean for me? And I didn't tell my kids till 2017. So that was 2 years in. They were younger, but I worried, when I put my youngest to bed and I was reading, and one time my finger went like this, just, and she noticed. And I was like, oh, it's just a thing, you know. So there were I was just basically keeping it together, trying to figure out what did it mean, because I didn't know what to tell them at first.
Mhm.
I didn't know how aggressive my case would be. Um, but exercising right off the bat when I went to physical therapy regularly, that really created more control and more of a sense of mastery and less of a sense of fear.
And then did you feel though like it was more real when you were kind of doing what you wanted in Semaphore versus, like you said, well, I was trying to focus on the positive. So I was taking these pictures, and maybe that wasn't what you were feeling at the time. It was almost like you were forcing yourself to kind of
Mhm.
like be positive and be the versus like,
Well, I did, I mean, at first I would notice the light. I mean, I love my kitchen and my faucet because every time I walk in there, there's something reflecting in an interesting pattern. So whenever I would see this stuff, I would have that experience of upliftedness or of awe or of wonder. So I would feel them, but then, you'd have frustrating parts of the day too. So they were genuine. Capturing them allowed me to access them again and again. So, um, I was listening to Susan Magsamen, and she talked about the idea of changing the narrative through. That's part of what the narrative methods that doctors use. And I thought, well, that's really true. That is part of what I was trying to do. Change the way I'm seeing it as what I can still do instead of what I can't do.
Lauren, did you want to come off mute? You unmute
Sure.
yourself.
I have a question. You talked about how what you're shooting is different, but how about how you're shooting? I know before I was diagnosed, I would leave the house almost every day with my backpack full of gear, my huge camera, my big lenses. And now my iPhone is very often my camera, but I'm finding ways to be creative with that. I still have the desire to shoot and be creative, but I can't do it the way I used to. Do you relate to that at all?
I do. I still like to print big, so I do. I just got an iPhone 15 for my birthday. That was awesome because now I think I'll be happier with printing iPhone pictures larger. And there's certain things you can get with an iPhone that you can't get with other stuff, like how close you can get in some ways. Um, but so I still try to lug around my camera, but it's one reason that I take almost everything within like a 2 mile radius of my home. And
Yeah.
I don't ever, I like to shoot handheld, but I always do it at a 2/50th now of a second. I would never shoot it at a 60th, unless I'm braced against a wall or, some other thing. So and the landscape work that I did, all square, was all shot with a Hasselblad. So that was film based. And I'm way too impatient for that now, to wait for my film to come back, all that, and spend the money on it.
Yeah. Thanks. Great work.
Well, I'd like to see your work if you want to put it in the
Well,
chat.
I just followed you on Instagram. So
Oh, good.
Instagram, yeah, I'm Rocksteady Fighter on Instagram. So some of it's
Awesome.
on there.
I'll follow you back.
Any other questions?
I'd like to know if people on this call that have Parkinson's are practicing something creative other than Lauren, who I know is.
You want to come off mute or put it in the chat? Marion? Did you want to say something? You came off mute. Oh, Donna C says she's doing memoirs.
Mm, terrific.
We're actually going to be offering a workshop for creative writing in April with Ashley Asti, who some of you know from the I Am poems.
Hmm,
And so,
great. Marcia, do you want to talk about your creative burst since having Parkinson's?
Okay. Hi. It's really interesting because I was never an artist. My mother was an artist and I was always jealous. And I don't know what happened. Obviously something really did happen inside the brain. But instead of just being interested and even messing up paint by numbers, I started doing a lot of different things. And during COVID, I took classes online in watercolor and acrylics, and I found something that I love called Zentangle that I still do at least once or twice a week. And I'm just having fun. It probably isn't anything that, I'm not making a book like Torrance did, but I really get involved. I find it meditative. I find it relaxing. And then I often have something that at least I appreciate at the end.
Yeah, so not only the product, but the whole process you really enjoy.
For me, it's about the process. I did once hear a discussion at Twitchy Woman, and they were about different kinds of art. And then I started talking to Sharon about it because I said, there must be something in the brain. And then we found out that Boss Bloom has done a lot of research on that. And one of the books that you showed, Torrance, he's one of the authors. So might be interesting to
Did you say Ivy Ross?
No, Boss, B-A-S, Bloom, B-L-O-E-M. It's one of those books that you showed today. He's a Parkinson's researcher. I forget, Belgium maybe. And he's written several papers about what happens to the brain.
So he's probably in the brain on art, your brain on art.
Yeah, it looked like it was a paper. It had several. I'm sorry, I
Oh,
don't remember
one of the
which one.
studies. One of the studies. Okay. All right. I'll look back at that. Cool.
So he's done some research on that. I'd really like to hear him talk some point.
Yeah. Yes, I see. The Silver Linings of Parkinson's. He was on that. And the artistic occupations are associated with the reduced risk in Parkinson's. Yes.
Well, I think there are a lot of silver linings. Like I met you and a lot of other people in our support group that are great. I think people with Parkinson's are wonderful people. I don't know. I think there's something special about us.
Well, I think we all become a little bit humbled by the experience at the very least. So, and the other thing that I found is that you meet someone who has the same challenge as you, then all of a sudden you get into an intense kind of conversation that you wouldn't have with, another person who may already be your friend. It's a bond that cuts right in to what's meaningful to you.
Like, what do we say? We're all in the same boat. Nobody can understand us like each other.
Yeah.
Nancy also said that she enjoys taking pictures. She always has. She tried painting and working with clay for the first time, and now she's been participating in drumming circles, which she loves trying new things.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting.
Where does she live?
They
I
say
love
that
drumming
when you play music, I don't myself play music, unfortunately, but I have thought for neuroplasticity and for joy, it would be great to start picking up an instrument. But apparently, when you're focused in that way, if you have problems with repetitive movements, they go away as part of that focus. I don't know if people are having that experience, but I've heard that.
Nancy, do you either want to come off mute or put in the chat? Marcia asked, where are you? Because she's trying to find a drum circle. And so she was just curious. Donna also says, I'm interested in the process. I go out my yard and take photos a lot. So we do have a lot of budding photographers here.
Terrific. Well, I think that the whole world has become much more savvy about just composition and picture taking with all the social media and the cameras that we're constantly carrying around. We're all much more fluent than we might think just before we even intentionally study photography.
I do want to remind everybody, because we put a lot of links in the chat, including Dr. Bloom's book. We have, oh, Nancy says she can't unmute herself. If you look on the bottom, you should say unmute. Should be a little microphone. But I will also say I encourage you to save your chat. If your chat is open, you can click on the three dots that say more and you can save your chat. Roger would like to know, what's your take on AI generated images like Dell 3 and others?
Well, I guess I don't really have an opinion. I haven't explored it. But I think that, if anything, if whatever tool you want to use, if it gives you an image that you feel moved by, I think it's a worthy thing.
And Ed also shared there's an incredible documentary titled Alive Inside that explores the effect of music on the brain. Well worth watching.
Awesome.
I do encourage you. We put Torrance's website in the chat. I already ordered my book beforehand, because if you order it through her website, she'll sign it for you. And that's a big deal to me. So I already ordered my book, but we encourage you to go on her website and just poke around. And, if you feel like it, you can certainly order her book. Thank you, everybody, for participating, for joining us today. Thank you, Torrance, for being here. Nancy unmuted if you just wanted to share real quick.
Yeah, I knew how to unmute myself, but I did something what you were saying before about your fingers doing whatever they want to do.
Oh, yes.
I pressed something and it froze it. And I was trying to unmute myself for the longest time.
Well, thank you.
I finally figured it out. But the drumming circle I participated in was with a cancer support group that I belong to. And also in my another Parkinson's group that I belong to, Rutgers University, we do dance classes, and I kept bugging her about getting a drumming circle together, so she did that for us as well. And I keep talking to the ones that I belong to, the Parkinson's groups that I belong to. I was just in a program at Princeton University this past weekend, and anybody who listens to me, I tell them, why aren't we incorporating other forms of art, not just dancing? I appreciate all the dance classes and they're wonderful, but there's other things that we need to be doing to help the Parkinson's community as far as the arts, with painting classes, with photography, how beautiful. When I was looking at your images, like you spoke through those images, you put words that we can't explain to people what we're feeling. By looking at the image, it says it all. I saw that picture with this knife and the Brussels sprout, and I try to tell my family, or so when we're discussing what my issues are, how dangerous it is for me in the kitchen now. And one of my biggest dangers is a knife, and I live alone. So that image says it all. I don't even have to explain it. Just by seeing that image and just seeing so many of your pictures, it just said it so without words. It just explains what we go through. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for unmuting and sharing that. I
Thank you
really
for listening.
appreciate it.
Thank you again. Here at PMD Alliance, we do have a tradition, our wave of gratitude. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And of course, Torrance, thank you for gifting us with your time today. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Thank
No
you,
more.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Torrance.
Bye, everyone.